first of all, we're going to put up some poll questions. If you could please answer them now or anytime during this. We just want to know like what you know already and how we're doing. And afterwards, we will send out another survey to see what you've learned and what we could do better or what you liked. So go ahead and start answering the poll questions, if you will. During this, I will keep an eye on our Q&As and chats. So if you have any questions you don't want to forget, make sure to put those in there, and I'll be sure that Linda gets your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so what do we do now? Okay, what do we do? I don't know what to do.
All right, the polling should be launched now.
Oh, okay.
We're just going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes probably, since we had a bit of a late start due to some technical stuff, as you might be able to see with the video. Yes, and in terms of questions, there will be also more questions at the end of the presentation. Yes. Let me just introduce you first.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I think maybe we might start for whatever technical difficulties there are. You can't see me. I'm Felix. I'm with Green Iowa Americorps at UNIC-EE. I'm sitting right next to Linda. And yeah, so this is Lyndon Nebbe.
Hi, everybody.
Works with a few different organizations like P.E.T, as well as the Blackhawk Wildlife Rehabilitation Project just outside of Cedar Falls. And the rest of the presentation is very much about Linda's work. And so I think it'd be better after a very brief introduction just to maybe go straight into the presentation. Yes, like ask questions as you wish. Dan will be like recording them, saving them for later. So yeah, any and all questions, please ask. And then at the very end, we'll also do one more poll, like very quickly, just like 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, do you want to start, Linda?
I will start. Okay. I like to start by giving credit to all of the entities that have taught me what have taught me, so I know what to do. And probably the first is the dog I grew up with. Her name was Sugar, if you're curious, and a whole lot of other people. And if we spent a lot of time on these, you'd recognize probably everybody that's here, and there's a whole lot more. I'm going to start by talking about wildlife rehabilitation first and the Blackhawk Wildlife Rehabilitation Project. Wildlife rehabilitation. essentially is caring for sick, injured, orphaned, or displaced native wild animals with the eventual goal of releasing them back to the wild environment. A little bit of history, and don't try and read all these words, I'll tell you all of it. Up until 1980, it was against the law for any individual citizen to retain a wild animal in their possession without a license, unless you had exotic animals or something special that you did. However, you know, little birds' eyes have gotten hurt. People have always found baby bunnies. So there were those individuals that did choose to take care of them and nurse them back to health or help them out. It was, like I said, in 1980, and I don't know why this happened. It was all over the country that this law existed. We all kind of came out at the same time. Within the first year, there were 2 national organizations and other kinds of organizations like Blackhawk Wildlife Rehabilitation Project that formed all over the country. The different states have different laws. Actually, this is on a 2-tier level. We have animals that are native to Iowa, and we have migratory and endangered species that are under the United States Fish and Wildlife Services. So there are 2 kinds of licenses that an individual can get in this field. And we won't go into how you have to obtain them or anything like that right now. It's still a law for other individuals without a license to possess a wild animal. So if you do find somebody who needs help, you're supposed to call a rehabilitator. The original paradigm when we started was that wild animals, didn't matter if they were sick, orphaned, or hurt, had to be left alone to let nature take its course. I feel strongly that over the years, this paradigm has changed, and people do care about those that are sick or hurt and need help. And so people that bring us these animals call us about these animals. It's a real different experience today than it was when we started back in the 80s. Okay, on to Blackhawk Wildlife Rehabilitation. There were a group of us here in Blackhawk County that were interested in wildlife rehab, and we formed this group. We are not nonprofit, and we've been around since 1988, and we're all volunteers. There's no paid staff in our program at all, so everything we do is volunteer. Our mission is to help and rehabilitate wild animals that are orphaned, injured, or in need of help, and then return them to their wild environment, which is what we have to do with them. If we don't do that, then we're possessing that animal illegally. We also are one of the few groups that are non-speciest, which just simply means we don't discriminate against who comes to us. We'll take everybody, including the tiny bunnies and the little sparrows. Every animal we deem is a life and is worth trying to help. The other thing is we support the human biophilic connection. You may not know what biophilic means. It just means education. And we feel that that's part of what our group does, is educate people. We like to educate them about the animals. We like to educate them about how to live in tandem with them, to get along with them, help them. And so you'll see as I go through the slides, a variety of ways that we try to support people and educate people as we do what we do with the animals. This is our mission statement. It's here so you can see how pretty it is. We're not going to read it. We have a hotline. Our hotline can be called anytime, 24/7. However, it's probably not going to be answered in the middle of the night. Therese Evans is the person that mans the hotline, or woman's the hotline. This is a number you can call and state if you found an orphan or an injured wild animal, or you just have a question about a wild animal that you'd like to have answered. And then you'll be directed to the right party. And I wanted to start the rest of the pictures with a little gal, big gal, I should say, who's out in my flight cage right now. This is a juvenile eagle, probably a year old. She's probably a female because they're a little bigger than the males. I can tell that she's a juvenile because she has a brown head. And when eagles are born, they're completely brown as they age. And by the time they're an adult at 5 years of age, she'll have a white head. She's going to be released sometime this week. She came from Grundy County and had a broken wing when she came in. Therese was basically her caregiver, and then she came to me for the flight cage. And hopefully now that the weather is acting decent, she'll be released pretty soon. Another animal that came in that was really unique and new to us this winter was on Christmas Eve, a swan. It had been hit again, well, on Highway 20 over near Grundy County. She had some really serious leg injuries, no broken bones, no torn muscles, but we actually went to Des Moines to some specialists that work with birds, and they're helping her now. And in the second picture, you can see some of the help that she's gotten. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a whole lot of animals, basically tell you a little bit about their story, what we did, and what the disposition was. And this little owl was found by a 5th grade girl while she waited for the bus over on Green Hill Road in Cedar Falls. She's probably about 2 weeks old. She'd still be in the nest. And when the little girl got there to catch the bus, saw the owl, ran home, got her mother, who called me, and they brought it out to me. Now, my first question was, did you know, was there an owl nest nearby? This is a great horned owl. Do you have great horned owls in your neighborhood? They claimed they could call their neighbor, and he would let them know that because he knows everything. So they did call the neighbor, and yes, there was a great horned owl's nest in the very tippy top of a tree that we could not get to. So we decided to get this baby back with its parents. We were going to make our own nest, which is what we did. As you can see, the neighbors all came to help. And what our plan is what do babies do when they get hungry? Well, they cry. And so this little baby would cry, and mom and dad, who we deemed were still around, would hear the baby and come and feed it and help it and take care of it, just as if it were in their nest. I stopped over both morning and evening to check on it. I fed it just enough to keep it viable, and I waited each day to make sure he was okay. It didn't take long, though. And in fact, not only did mom and dad connect with him right away, but the nest must have not been very well built, because we suddenly ended up with another owl on the ground to join the first one. Owls lay their egg in a nest. They lay them separately, and they begin to hibernate or sit on them right away. So you get owls of different ages in a nest. The babies are in the eggs about 4 weeks, then they're in the nest for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then they go to school for 5 months while the parents teach them to be an owl. A great horned owl can live to be 30 or 40 years old, maybe even older than that. We heard about one that had been in a display for 57 years. So I don't know. Every time we went over to take care of the little owl, you can see this black blob up in the tree. If we looked hard enough, we could find a parent that was watching us, checking on us, making sure we were taking care of the babies. And after about a week, one of the babies began to flap his wings, the oldest one. That meant he was ready to be a brancher and hop out of the nest and begin going to school. He left, and we had one baby left. We still were being watched by the parents. And finally, about another week later, he was hopping around on the tree and flapping his wings. The man across the road, who knew where everything was, called me and said he's hit the road. And I found him down the street in a pine tree. The rest of the summer, we had the delightful experience of having the neighbors call every once in a while and say, hey, I saw the kids and mom and dad, they're doing great. And that's exactly what we like to hear. So that's an ideal experience where we can not only help the baby, we can get it back with the parents so it's raised, in a natural way, and it works. We get all sorts of animals. This is a baby raccoon. If something happens to mom, this one's eyes are still closed, so it's still very young. Again, we have formulas, and every animal is different. The habits of each animal are different. So with wildlife rehab, you have to learn a lot about everybody. And again, we raise them up until they're ready to release. When they're ready to release, we release them in a spot that would be a good habitat with a feeding station as a backup. until they know how to hunt and get along on their own. These are just some little guys that we've had go through. I'd love to just talk about each one of them, but I'm not going to because we'd be here all night. If you were in the room with me, I'd ask you if you knew what these are. Most people don't. They can guess a lot of things, but what they are baby possums. When baby possums are born, they're as big as the tip of your little finger, and they crawl up into mama's pouch. This is a rare view of inside mama's pouch where they spend 2 months growing and drinking milk. And then when they're 2 months old, they're ready to come out of mom's pouch. Now, it's interesting. We probably get more calls from people who are scared to death of possums than any other animal, or just really freaked out by them. And yet they're one of the most benign animals in nature. These are babies that would still be pouch age, that were old enough that we could actually work with. But it's not long before they don't fit in the pouch anymore, and mom carries them around like this. Now, one of the unique things about a possum is she has a very small brain. And I don't know if that means she's not very intelligent, but she doesn't count well. She can have up to 13 or 14 babies, and you can see some of them are hanging on a little bit wobbly while they fall off. And so we get individual possums that mom's been transporting that have fallen off. And then we go ahead and continue raising them as well. I think they're adorable. One thing you'll find out about possums, and again, like I said, people are just scared to death of them. If you go directly up to one, it's going to open its mouth and show you all its teeth. It has more teeth than any other mammal, and it's going to hiss loudly. In most cases, if you continued forward, this is what you would get. This possum is not dead. It only does a really good job of pretending to be dead. They play possum. When they grow up, one of the beauties in a possum is they seldom are going to make their nest in your garage or under your porch, because their nest is on their belly and they carry their babies around with it. They're vagabonds that travel around and eat insects, particularly ticks, or a lot of the things that we don't like. They're the vacuum sweepers of the wild. And like I said, probably the most benign wild animal animal period you'll run into. Now, to be a rehabilitator, you have to have a vet that's willing to work with you. Our vet is Lori Cherney. She works at Den-Herder Vet in Waterloo. She actually was a member of our program before she became a vet, and that's why she went to vet school. Vets cannot do wild animals, treat wild animals, unless they also have the permit to do it from the DNR. And most vets don't want to, because everyone is different and unique. They have to learn something new about every animal that comes in. Like I said, we don't discriminate, but this big brown bat was an extra special big brown bat. His name was Bruce Wayne. And when he came in, he was unable to fly, but very aware. And it was during the time there was a lot of talk in Iowa, bats were not protected. And of course, there were people that thought they should. So we went through, he became famous because he was the spokesperson for the bats. Governor Branstad was the governor of Iowa at that time. And there was a big headline in the newspaper that said, the only good thing for a bat is the end of a tennis racket. Bruce went around and let a lot of people know that wasn't true, that bats are really important. We do get kind of rare guys once in a while. This one's an albino big brown bat. These two guys are two first-year hawks. That first year that they're on their own, sometimes life is tough. And both of them came in almost starved and so weak they could hardly stand up. They had not passed their finding food and eating tests. And so they came out here to spend the winter with us. And then in the spring, we took them back where they came from originally and released them. Which is, well, the reason that we do that is every animal is from a family. Believe it or not, the hawks that are in a certain area are all part of the same family. Then they're if they have a mate, the mate's in that area. And they also know their territory. They're familiar with it. They know where food is. We like to take them back where they come from. This is a baby barred owl. And this was my baby barred owl nursery one year. In Iowa, we have, I believe, 7 different kinds of owls. The barred is the second largest. You'll see Spirit, who's my educational bird at the end. And it's the second largest owl. I love this picture. That's why it's here. It's a coyote, if you haven't figured it out. And I'm sure he's laughing at us because I think he thinks or knows he's smarter than all of us. When we started doing this, I believe they told us that bobcats were endangered in Iowa or didn't exist in Iowa. But the story was one night a guy down by Des Moines was headed home from work at 11 o'clock at night. It was snowing like crazy. It was really cold out. He was in the country. He was going across the bridge. And as he went across the bridge, he was sure something ran in front of his car and he thought he might have hit it. So he parked his car at the edge of the road and got out and went down the big hill to the river below and walked out on the ice, did all the things you shouldn't do if you're in that situation. And there it was. And it looked pretty dead, he thought. So he pulled it up the hill and put it in the trunk of his car. He went home and went to bed. Next morning, his kids were eating breakfast and he came out and he said, "Hey guys, before you go to school, I got something cool to show you." And as he opened the trunk, he found out that what he had was a very angry bobcat. He had a real adventure finally taking it to a vet. It ended up at Iowa State, and then nobody wanted to keep it. If I could say anything about a bobcat, they have a growl that you feel, you don't hear. It's amazing. He did get well, and of course we took him back to the bridge and released him in that place. We don't get very many reptiles because reptiles are usually born able to care for themselves. But this turtle was run over on an interstate down by Keokuk. And when we got him, you can see one of the metal plates we had to help hold his shell together with. He was probably as big as your face. We figure about 40 years old, and we were very happy to be able to release him again and hopefully live another 40 years. We get lots and lots of birds. These are little robins. They're the fledglings, the ones that are out of the nest that are going to school, just like the hawks. Songbirds spend 3 weeks in the egg, 3 weeks in the nest, and then they go to school for about 3 weeks learning to be a bird. And again, we get all different kinds, shapes, sizes, colors. This is a cuckoo bird. I've only seen one in my whole life. A pretty bird. This one came from UNI campus, and a very noisy bird and very smart, I might add. And then of course the crow. And I'm blown away every time I work with a crow at the intelligence. They can live to be 40 or 50 years old. They seem to absorb everything and remember it. One of the things that's cool about a crow is they collect trinkets, and they have a cache where a place where they store them. This was when this crow came in, it was a baby. We raised it to release point and released it from here with a feeding station as a backup. We had a crow family that lived here that did eventually adopt it. And I found his cache. So I decided I would give him some toys to put in his cache, and I put 2 or 3 things in. He got really mad at me and went and took them all out and threw them away from his cache, and then he moved his cache. That year, he particularly was into, or this crow was into shiny, sparkly things, and that's when shiny, sparkly shoes or straps on shoes were in. And he was really amazed when he saw them. He never, ever harmed any toes, though, or any feet. Crows have a language. They have more sounds in their language than they do, and they talk to each other in what one could maybe call sentences. I mentioned our crow adopted a family here. We had his feeding station right out by our kitchen window, and when it was empty, he'd come and tell us it was empty. And one time I followed him to see where he took the food, and Indeed, I got to meet some of his family members that he was feeding. You usually could see him all summer, but as time went on, we saw less and less of him as he faded into his family. And I can't tell you what an experience like that is like. One winter, kind of like the week we just had, I got 5 non-predators. This is a blue heron that was found in a chunk of ice. The DNR officer that brought her to me wasn't sure that it was even alive, but she certainly was, and eventually released. A pelican came with a broken wing. Again, we couldn't release this pelican, but we were really lucky. He went to live at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, and they have a wonderful pelican display if you ever go. This eagle, again, a juvenile eagle, my first contact with him was when a guy sent me a picture and he said, "Hey, I saw this eagle in George Wythe Park." And I took his picture, but look at his bill, and he was kind of wobbly, and I tried to catch him, but I couldn't. It's kind of a, weird thing. So I didn't have anything to do except that about a week later, Waterloo Animal Control called me and they said, "Hey, we've got an eagle for you." We picked him up in Cedar Falls. And guess what? The bill was the same, and the eagle was so diminished at that point in time, it just was laying there. So he went from George Wythe to Cedar Falls to Waterloo Animal Control and then to my basement. The next morning when I went outside, and we live in a part of Cedar Falls that there are no eagles that come here, but there was an eagle sitting in the tree in our front yard, and he was there for a whole week. The eagle recovered, and with some help from some other wildlife rehab friends, we used a Dremel on the beak to trim it. And eventually he was ready to release again. He could actually tear his food apart now and catch it and do all the things that little eagles need to do. We took him back to George Wythe because we figured that his, and this is actually a video, but it doesn't work with this get up. Okay. Beavers. Yes, we get beavers once in a while. Amazing. Actually, beavers too can live to be quite old, 30 or 40 years. They usually live in a colony with their families, except for the young males. When they're 2 or 3 years old, they have to leave the family and go off and find a wife and, start over again with her family. I think that's probably who this guy was, because some people found them in their front yard, not near water anywhere. Now, I have to say, beavers are challenging to work with because they eat what they live in, because all my buildings are wood. This is a design decoration by a beaver. The beaver I showed you in the first slide actually made a doorway in the building he was in, but he didn't leave. I think he kind of liked getting free food. Baby beavers are adorable. These are just adorable pictures. And when you're a wildlife rehabilitator, I know that there's places where they have, really great lodgings and stuff for the animals. But when you do it the way I do it, sometimes it's your bathtub or different places in your house. These little guys grew up and then were eventually released when they were ready to go on the river, hopefully successfully. So we get wild animals in rehab for a lot of different reasons. Habitat destruction. Sometimes we have some really good friends that are tree trimmers or tree cutters that every year show up 2 or 3 times with baby birds or baby squirrels, cutting down trees. And I don't know how the word deer got in there. Electrocutions caused by being on lines where they shouldn't be, poaching, fishing, animals caught in fish lines. I got a little owl one day where the hook was in that little owl's beak, but somehow it had gotten caught first in his wing, and he, in trying to pick it out, had pulled it through his wing and got caught in his beak. And he took actually 4 surgeries to get that out of his beak and get him ready to fly again. Of course, cars are a real nemesis. people keep or pick up babies just because they're awfully cute and they want to raise them. There's toxins that the animals get involved in. Rat poison especially, sadly, is really attractive to animals. Oh dear. Okay. My fixer is going to fix things. You? I must have pressed the wrong thing. There we go. Okay. Rat poison apparently tastes really good and attracts a lot more than just rats. Lead shot and lead poisoning is a real nemesis, and we're trying all the time to educate about that. Of course, lack of food and starvation at different times, weather conditions like the weather we've just been through. We've had a real rash of animals coming in, diseases that affect whole species of animals, natural disasters. Now, if you look at this list, all these things are things actually that people, not all of them, but most of them are things that people have interfered in. And so one of the things I like when I do an educational program is to point out that we cause so many of the injuries that we end up trying to help the animals overcome. This hawk is the sledge pool hawk. The sledge pool in a, what do you call those? Waste management places. That's the one where the toilet water empties into. He'd been in there for hours before they were able to get him out, and we felt there wasn't a shot that we were going to be able to rehabilitate him. We cleaned him and cleaned him and cleaned him, and it just looked like it was hopeless. But guess what? He actually was releasable. He had to grow new feathers, but after he grew new feathers, he could fly as good as ever. We've actually gotten two animals from the sledge pools. This one was a really sad one. It doesn't show so good in a picture, but one day a man brought me a raccoon with a pop can stuck on his forepaw. Sadly, when we took the pop can off, we took the forepaw off too, and there was no way to work with him, and we had to euthanize him. We had a very, very rare albino barred owl born in Cedar Falls, and has, during the time we had it, he's with his normal little buddy here, so you can see the difference. We had several other people in the area, a person over in Waterloo and somebody over by Ellsworth say, hey, 20 years ago, my grandma told me about albino barred owl. So somehow genetically, I think we've got a little bit of something. Besides take care of the animals, I mentioned earlier, we try hard to do programs, educational programs for all ages. We have interns work with some of the wildlife rehabilitators. If they have an internship with one of their college courses, it's required, or somebody has some volunteer hours. We also have prairie land where I live. I'll show you that in just a minute. We have classes that come out from you and I, people that come out and help us burn our prairie. This was sort of a double whammy class. It was a group from Price Lab, actually, some fifth graders who were doing a service project with some 3-year-olds in a nursery school, and they brought their nursery school friends out, and they wanted to do a service project for us. Think of something that 3-year-olds can do. We did, actually. We made little pillowcases that were long and narrow, and the little kids filled them with sand, and it was perfect. And I've used them a lot. In fact, I've used them up. This is where we live. When we moved to Cedar Falls, we wanted to live, and this was 40 years ago, we wanted to live someplace absolutely amazing, woods on a river. Well, we couldn't either afford it or we couldn't find what we wanted. So we rented this old farmhouse in the northeast, or in the southeast corner, or southwest corner of Cedar Falls. It actually was cropland and a cattle lot. And what we decided to do, but little bits of, after we'd lived here a while, began buying little pieces of the land until we had 22 acres. And we decided we wanted to restore what would have been natural back before it became farmland. So we planted over 10,000 hardwood trees, with 7 acres of prairie, and dug 2 ponds. And this is one early spring picture of it from the air. The prairie is fantastic. It's just what you dream that you want a prairie to be, and different every year. The ponds are great, and the woods are fantastic too. And it's been as much fun watching it grow as watching the animals get better. I need to say, and I'm going to say it before I talk about this slide, I've told you happy stories for the most part. Actually, when I get a new intern, I always start by saying wildlife rehab is as much about death as it is about life. I would guess at least half the animals that come to us have been injured or maimed or harmed in a way that they could no longer survive in the wild, or they're suffering terribly, and we have to also euthanize them. So there's that part of of being a rehabber that I at least want to mention. So what do you do if you find an orphan or an injured wild animal? First, assess the situation, find out, as much as you can. Do you see the injury? Do you see a nest or a den? Learn as much about it as you can from just looking at it. Are their parents observable anywhere? If they are, leave it alone or put it back. And this is a really important thing. The old wives' tale that if you handle or touch a wild animal, the parents will not take care of it anymore if it's a young animal. That's not true at all. Parents everywhere, it doesn't depend at all on every species. Mamas and dads like their kids and they want them back. And so if you call us at that point, you can give us some information, or we'll ask you a lot of questions, and to either tell you what to do or tell you you can bring the animal to us. If it's orphan or injured, we don't want you to handle or feed it anything, because until we can see it, we don't know really what's wrong with it. Handle it carefully with gloves and a blanket. Most animals have ways of protecting themselves that you want to protect yourself from. Put it in a safe box or crate, and then call a wildlife rehabilitator, and we'll work with you either on helping it, or we'll take it and go ahead and help it. These are little birds that came in. They'd fallen out of the nest in a storm. We put them back in the nest, and absolutely, Mom was very happy to continue feeding them. This nest is one of my favorites. A teacher from Price Lab, when it was still open, called and said, the nest in my tree was blown out last night. I have birds all over my yard. Well, it was pretty well wrecked. So we got a basket, we made a nest, we put the babies back in, and you can't see it, but the mother's head sticking up here. She was very happy to have her kids back. We do a lot of putting back and usually feel pretty good about it. This is a fledgling bird. It's a bird that's out of the nest, learning to be a bird and go to school. Oftentimes, their parents don't hang around visibly. They're still taking care of their baby, though. And these, make sure you leave alone and give the parents a chance to do that. Very few fledglings are ever orphans. Every bird has a mom or dad, and for most species, if something happens to one or the other, they'll get an aunt or uncle to help them keep raising the kids. This is a fledgling. If you held it in your hand, you can see they look kind of like a big bird, but they have a really short tail. By the time that tail's grown long, then they're ready to release. Bunnies are the same way. Put them back in the nest. It doesn't matter if you touch it. Mama will come back and get them. And I think probably we get more bunny calls than any other animal call. And again, put it back in the nest and give Mom a chance. That's a baby bunny. When they're about as big as a baseball, they're not a baseball, a tennis ball. They're ready to be on their own. And a lot of people think that they're ready to hold on to then. So in a minute, you're going to see a video of a barred owl, and I think that we are ready. So what do I do?
This is one of the cats here. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a lot of helpers in our house.
Let's see.
Oh, well, there you go. Maybe.
Yeah, it's right here. And we'll just open this video here.
Oh, okay. This is Peaceful Spirit, or yes, Peaceful Spirit, my educational bird. I've had other educational birds. You can turn it on. Hi, I'm Linda, the person who's talked to you, and this is my educational partner, Spirit. Spirit's a barred owl, and she's been working with me for over 20 years. Barred owls are native to Iowa. They're the second largest owl in Iowa. The largest is the great horned. And they can live to be 30 or 40 years old. So they can live a long time. If you are looking at her, you notice she has one eye. She was found on a highway, and her eye had been severely damaged. That's why it was removed. And that's why she was selected as an educational bird, is because she didn't have an eye. However, some owls can do just fine with one eye. When we get, kind of being sloppy here, Carl. When we get an educational bird, we have to look for several things. First of all, they can't be releasable according to the law. And they also have to have a temperament that actually fits. And Spirit definitely does. She's a pretty laid-back barred owl. And barred owls are pretty laid-back as well. Okay? Wings out. Okay, now I have something else to share with you quickly. It's not very long.
Same document, right?
Yeah, yes, it is the same document. I have to thank my helper here. I'd still be trying to get the computer to work if he weren't here. You could probably close the message. Okay, it's clear at the bottom. You have to go. Oh dear, I'm gonna have to go through it that way.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Just lie down.
Mm-mm.
Okay, maybe if there's any questions right now while he's, oh, you went quite a ways. Okay, keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Do you want to do it?
Okay. What, this? Oh, yeah.
Left or go back or forward?
Am I going the wrong way?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I just proved to you I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Okay, I have one more slide with Blackhawk Wildlife. Our hotline number, again, and Therese Evans is the person that answers the phone, and she'll direct you what to do. If you can also call any of the other 6 rehabilitators that work here. There's a whole list of rehabilitators in Iowa on the DNR website as well. So, okay. The other organization I wanted to tell you about that I was part of founding is called Pep House. It's an all-volunteer, again, organization that does animal-assisted therapy programs with our pets, dogs, and cats. I know you've heard about programs like this. We started in 1983, and believe it or not, we were the first organized animal-assisted therapy program in the country. And I think it's amazing that we're still vital and going, except for this year with COVID, but people are waiting in line to get going again. The volunteers in our program work with their own personal pets. Most of them are dogs, and there are a few cats occasionally. And they go to places like hospitals, adult daycare centers, hospices, youth shelters, all over Blackhawk County and sometimes outside. Has a program. Our teams have logged over 10,000 hours annually of the people that we visit. I already mentioned we're one of the first in the country, and we've provided a model for other programs. It's now definitely, and we're also a statewide and national resource center for various things that we've done. And we provide other programs as well, like speakers, etc. The people in P.E.T. are just people that want to volunteer, and basically they're selected and trained by coming to a training program, and then their personal pets that they want to work with also are selected. They have to pass temperament evaluation, and they are special animals. Like I said, they're all personal pets that belong to these people. The thing is, things that we look at in their temperament eval are the health of the animal. Of course, the behavior of the animals. We like to have the people talk about the animals, and we like pets that live in tandem with them in their own home, because they'll be visiting hospitals and nursing homes and places like that. We like them to be a team with their person. When they go into these places, they can work well together. Safety is a big factor. We need an animal that is safe. We want an animal that is social, because that's their job, and an animal that is appropriate for where it's going to visit. In other words, we're not going to send a Chihuahua into a school for mentally handicapped children that are preschool, just because they wouldn't know how to be gentle and kind and how to handle it. So that's what we look for in a pet. These are just some pictures I selected because I loved them. And when we started, we put out a note to nursing homes in the area, and every single one in the area at the time came, and every single one asked us to visit. We have had about 100 volunteers at a time that visit. I wanted to mention this little boy. I was a counselor in a school at the time, and the only reason he'd ever get out of his wheelchair was to come feed my fish. I saw quite a bit of him. He liked to feed my fish. I was at a conference not long ago, and all of a sudden at the conference, this middle-aged man in a wheelchair is zooming across the floor toward me and yelling, "Hey!" And then he got to me and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I looked at him, and I remembered him in a second, because it was this kid that I'd had when I'd been at Hanson School in Cedar Falls. No, we have never had a llama in our program, but they apparently are house breakable. And that is one of the requirements, is they have to be a domestic animal and also able to control that factor. So there were programs with them. We did have a rooster in our program. Roosters don't typically meet the requirements of a program like this, but this guy was a really sweet, friendly guy. And you can see the joy that the woman that was holding him experienced. This is one of my favorite all-time pictures. And to me, just holds the essence of what we did. Not only is the dog enjoying what's happening, the woman is enjoying the dog. And I have to say here that there's been research done that just being in the company of a dog is physically good for a person in many, many ways, all the way from the fact that they're relaxing and you're sharing, positive vibes with one another, to the fact that they have bacteria and what's the other one? Bacteria.
Oxytocin?
No, like bugs. They have stuff on them because they go outside and roll around, that we need as humans to be healthy, because they go outside and they roll around in the grass and bring all of that into our houses and onto our laps, and it's good for us and makes us strong and healthy. Just a neat picture. And for more information, if you're interested in Pep House, Rochelle Yosefi is the person that talks to our volunteers. Again, you can call me, but this is her number and email address, and she would get you lined up with Pep House. And as soon as COVID is out of the way, I'm sure we'll stop visiting again. And that's it.
Yes. Okay, let's see if we can stop sharing our screen. I'm actually not sure. Stop the video.
It's really nice hearing someone else say, I'm not quite sure.
Dan, do you know how to stop sharing the slides by chance?
And
It should be at the bottom. It says the screen, share screen, and it's a green arrow. And then I don't know what it says when you stop sharing the screen.
That's what I, yeah.
What about end? Would that do it?
That would end the present. That would end the whole thing.
Oh,
Well, I mean, we can do it with it with it still on. It just look a little funny.
did
Okay.
anybody have any questions, Dan?
Yeah, we have a couple here. One about hawks and one about baby bunnies. So the one about hawks is, how do you teach hawks to hunt if they don't already know how?
Kind of like little kids learn how to do things too. They learn by trial and error. And boy, once they've tasted something, they know how to go get it again. So it's partly their instinct. It's natural for them to be able to do it, but they have to be in an environment where they have that opportunity, and they learn by trial and error. And that kind of is a handicap in some ways for a lot of the animals we raise. It might take them a little bit longer to actually be able to, learn to find the food. And we start by, first of all, we feed them. Then we put a feeding station out for them. And so they're recognizing dead food. And then eventually we'll put them in an area with some live food that would be a mouse or something like that they'll get, but they catch on very quickly. So it's already imprinted.
All right. The one about the baby bunnies.
They do know they're a hawk. So as soon as they meet another hawk, yeah, they tell each other what to do.
All right. The one about the baby bunnies is, what if you accidentally mowed through a nest of bunnies and the bunnies are okay but displaced? Should you just put them back?
Okay, what I would do is try to put the nest back, even if you probably can see it now because Mom probably put it in tall grass where it was kind of hidden. Mom is going to be tied into the place of that nest, not to the bunnies, the sounds they make or anything else, but where the nest was. So the important thing is to gather the nest materials that you can and some grass to go with it and put it in the place it was in and put the bunnies in it. And you'll have your best shot at Mom coming back and moving them. And she probably will come back and move them to a better place.
All right. Another one about a hawk. How would you catch a hawk if you think it's sick or hurt, but then it starts to fly away?
Then it's maybe not sick or hurt. That's a really good question, though. And one thing that we do when people call us, we ask them to bring the animal to us because we get calls literally from all over Iowa. What I tell people is, and call me and talk to me, please, before you just go out to do it for fun. But what I tell people is to take a blanket, the kind you can't see through, kind of a heavy blanket. You're going to go out and walk up behind the bird and throw the blanket or put the blanket over the top of it. You're going to have gloves on, like welding gloves or something to protect you, and come down. You're at the tail of the hawk, just like I'm at the tail of the cat, and you're going to come down over the blanket, over the top of it. And you're going to have another person there with a box, and you kind of scoot it into the box, and you actually don't even handle it. But I'm going to say this because as far as I know, we have never had anyone harmed who's done that way when they've brought us a hawk. And I would suspect we get, I get about 250 animals a year. Therese Evans is at least takes in that many. The rest of our volunteers, an awfully lot of them. So we take in quite a few a year. And we've never had anyone hurt by a hawk or an eagle or an owl that's gone from the back with a heavy blanket, put it over the top, heavy gloves on, and just scoot it into the box, and then be sure you close the box.
All right. What is your favorite animal to work with?
Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah, I figured it might be.
Really can't, because everyone is such a unique individual and animality. I'll say that, not personality. And I will admit that every year there's maybe 5 or 6 of the critters that just kind of, reaches in and just kind of grabs you, but that you kind of develop a special relationship with. But it's been every species. You've got that little robin that just, darn it, he really knows how to work you, and or a coyote maybe that you have a special experience with, or an eagle or a hawk, or so that I've been doing it for 40 years. So there's been a lot of animals through here, and they've all had their turn at being the special one.
All right. Are there other ways that community members can help?
Yes and no. Right now, no. COVID has presented a real issue. Sometimes there are volunteers that can help. It's a difficult thing to do. I'd love to talk to people that want to volunteer, and I try to do it if we can work out a way to do it that works for them and works for us. I don't know how to answer it any better than that, but I've had a lot of volunteers over the years that have helped, even for a job. Felix here has helps. He comes out with a group of people every 2 weeks, and they do things that are hard for me to do, that take muscle and that are kind of gritty sometimes.
Do you have any recommendations on how to build habitat for any animals?
Oh gosh. Just read about different habitat, and honestly, I think we covered a lot of it with prairie grass, with hardwood timber, and with ponds. They don't like short cut bluegrass. Most animals do not live in that. So you've got to have something that looks a little bit rugged and ragged, and be happy with that, knowing that you're providing a home and probably some really good food for some critters to live in. And you definitely can do it in town too. Got to be a little careful with ordinances not to go overboard, but some gardens that might be some more natural plants that grow high, and just welcome the animals when they come.
All right. Thank you. That's all the questions that I have, or that were sent to me. I want to thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is there, before we go, if you have a question, be sure to get it in right now. All right. It looks like we're not getting any more. So again, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for letting me do this. I really love to share this. Maybe too much.
Oh, it can't be too much. Thank you again. And I'll just remind everybody, we have one more thing coming up next Thursday at the same time, 6 o'clock. It's the Community Conservation Workshop. At 6 o'clock, you can find the link on the Seed Library's Facebook page, and all sorts of different other organizations like Waste Track and any other environmental organization you can think of probably have that link on their websites as well. And yeah.
Well, this was a cool experience too. I told Felix, I said, I've given speeches and I've done Zoom, but never both at the same time. And it worked well. I appreciate being able to do it.
If there's a chance, could you put up, do you think you could put up your slide with your contact information again? If not, we could also, this will also be recorded and saved on put on the Seed Library's Facebook page and the Public Library's YouTube channel.
And we'll definitely do a follow-up like we've done with some of the other presentations as well. And we can definitely include a section for that kind of information if people are wanting that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll follow up with that.
Oh, I did say that we do have a Facebook page for both Pep House and for Blackhawk Wildlife, and that contact information would be there too. So just Google the names.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Try to stay warm and have a good night, and hope to see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let me just.
I can do that.